About 2 months ago, I made a video titled The Sad State of Chase Credit Cards in 2026, and in that video, I talked about how Chase's heavy reliance on Hyatt as a transfer partner to be valuable was a double-edged sword to me. And in light of that video, 2 months later, it comes to completely bite Chase in the ass. If you didn't know by now, Hyatt is planning what people like to call dynamic pricing light. Essentially what that means is in May of 2026 and beyond, Hyatt is changing from a 3-tier system of off-peak, standard, and peak pricing to a new 5-level model with the following redemption zones of lowest, low, moderate, upper, and top. Hyatt also has separate award charts for its all-inclusive resorts and memorable properties. Both of these charts will also expand to the 5 redemption tier. While the lower hotel categories do seem to be getting a bit of a break, with category 1, 2, and 3 hotels becoming slightly cheaper in the new tier structure in areas compared to the 3-tier model. The ones that people are most concerned about are the category 6 through 8 hotels that are getting astronomically more expensive, ranging anywhere between a nearly 40% increase to 67% increase at the top level. For example, category 8 properties can now cost as much as 75,000 points per night in the top segment, a nearly 67% jump from the old peak pricing of 45,000 points per night. But it's not just category 8 that is affected. All categories will see at least a 30% increase on the most expensive nights, with the top night awards in category 2 and category 5 both increasing by over 50% from the current peak pricing. So prior to these award changes in May, a lot of people are recommending that you lock in the prior award structure pricing for future stays right now. There are other changes to be wary about with Hyatt, which I won't go into full detail, but changes include earlier access to award availability for elite members and credit card holders, and that there's going to be an easier way to share points amongst friends and family, as currently the only way to do so is to physically fill out a form, which you then email to a specific email address, and this process usually takes around a couple of days or so to do. So what does that mean for Chase as a credit card lender and its ecosystem? Well, in short, I personally think it's bad. In my previous video where I quoted earlier, Chase having Hyatt as a transfer partner has always felt like a double-edged sword to me. On one end, Hyatt has one of those unicorn transfer partners where it hadn't gotten devalued into the ground, so you could always find extremely good redemptions through it. But on the other side, because it was such a good transfer partner, it seemed like Chase had gotten lazy on their products, because at the end of the day, they felt like their customers would still sign up for new credit cards solely for the benefit of being able to transfer out their points to Hyatt exclusively. Now that Hyatt is getting a significant devaluation to its entire program, only one side of what I said still remains true. Hyatt is slowly unraveling as a unicorn transfer partner, and yet Chase as an ecosystem still remains lazy on their product, solely relying on the fact that because they had Hyatt as a unicorn transfer partner, relied heavily on that one fact for customers to sign up for their cards. But now that Hyatt has devalued its entire program, Chase is less of a valuable ecosystem as a whole to apply for, and the issues with their ecosystem as a whole are even more glaring. Issue number 1 is their transfer partners. I know, right? Kick them while they are down. But what I mean is Chase as a credit card lender compared to other credit card lenders has the least amount of transfer partners by far. With only 13 transfer partners, they fall pretty short of their competitors. While some may argue that yes, Chase does have more domestic transfer partners with the likes of JetBlue, United, and Southwest, transferring to these transfer partners and others is just not that enticing anymore. In the past, Southwest had a more dynamic structure where you could get extremely good value of upwards of 2 cents per point on flights, but nowadays it's stuck at the same pricing structure value of 1.2 cents to 1.4 cents per point value. And going through the other transfer partners Chase has, excluding the obvious Hyatt unicorn, which is now no longer that much of a unicorn, the other transfer partners are a bit lackluster as well, and generally I have a hard time finding value through them. Aer Lingus, British Airways, and Iberia are actually all under the same Avios umbrella, which is a loyalty currency for the IAG group, which includes the 3 mentioned as well as a couple of more. And while you can find some decent redemptions through British Airways, to say that there are 3 transfer partners $100 is a bit of a stretch to myself. Aeroplan Air Canada is my personal favorite Plan B option, with certain routes such as the one between the United States and Japan that still has a bit of value, but overall I've noticed that the entire program provides less and less reasonable redemptions over the years. And Virgin Atlantic can still squeeze some decent value out of, but again, other ecosystems offer both of these programs, so it's not like Chase is offering anything unique. So to again emphasize my entire point and the point I'm trying to make in this video, the Hyatt devaluation is a major hit to the Chase ecosystem. Issue number 2, the lack of everyday spending categories. The Chase trifecta is usually composed of the Chase Sapphire Preferred, Chase Freedom Flex, and the Chase Freedom Unlimited. If you spent any time in the credit card space or point space, you've probably heard people rave about the Chase trifecta. It's often called the perfect trifecta, but in 2026, it's becoming more noticeable that the trifecta lacks a lot of coverages for everyday spending categories. And because of Hyatt's devaluation, is just not as much of a priority to get anymore. Yes, it's fantastic for travel and dining. You get strong multipliers, and the rotating 5% categories can be great when they line up. But let's look at what most people actually spend money on every single month. First, groceries. Outside of the occasional rotating quarters, groceries usually earn just the base rate. For many households, groceries are one of the biggest expenses every single year, yet the trifecta doesn't really consistently reward them for it. In the past, with these Chase Sapphire Preferred, there was a method with Publix where you could utilize the 3x multiplier for online groceries at a physical Publix location by using your phone at the register as a form of payment, thus securing the 3x online grocery multiplier. But as of a month ago, that method was actually formally patched, which, you guessed it, renders this category basically useless to most people. And it's the same story with gas, a category that is unfortunately intertwined with most people's daily expenses, especially with gas prices reaching astronomical levels again. It'd be great for any of the Chase credit cards to provide a reliable source of earnings for gas purchases. But Chase offers no permanent gas category. If it's not in the quarterly bonus, you're earning 1x points back while filling up your tank week after week. Then obviously there are utilities, electricity, water, internet, phone bills. These are unavoidable expenses, and the trifecta gives you 0 bonuses for them either. And now that there isn't really a place to redeem Chase reward points in the future due to, Hyatt becoming devalued, the overall Chase trifecta is now bad. If your spending is heavily on groceries, gas, and bills, you're leaving points on the table through the holes that the Chase trifecta has. Issue number 3 is that Hyatt wasn't the only devaluation. Last year, around June of 2025, Chase had a major devaluation to their entire ecosystem when they removed the 1.25 and the 1.5 cent redemptions from Chase Travel. Deeping diver, if you had any of the more premium credit cards Chase had to offer for more than a year, you'd probably remember that certain credit cards like the Chase Sapphire Preferred, the Chase Sapphire Reserve, and the Chase Inc. Business Preferred offered anywhere between a 25 to 50% boost when redeeming your Chase reward points through Chase Travel. That meant that prior to the change to what it is now, which is the Points Boost program, you could use the points you earn in a simple way of getting a little bit more value than the normal cashback of 1 cent per point. This was an extremely valuable value given to those that didn't necessarily want to deal with the headache of searching for flights and hotels and then transferring those points out to a transfer partner, but still wanted to get more value than the normal cashback rate. On paper, the Points Boost program, which is what Chase follows now, looks great. It states that with the Chase Sapphire Reserve, you can get anywhere between 1.25 to 2 cents worth of value towards select flights and luxury hotel stays. And for the Sapphire Preferred and the Inc. Business Preferred, get 1.25 to 1.75 cents worth of value, which then might confuse some of you when I say it's a devaluation, but please stay with me while I show you 4 different pictures. Here's the first picture of all the flights that you can book via the Chase Travel portal from IAD to New York on April 14th till April 18th without the Points Boost only toggled on. In total, there are 57 departing flights. Now, here's a picture of all of the flights that you can book via the Chase Travel portal between IAD and New York on April 14th till April 18th with the Points Boost only toggled on. 2 total departing flights. Keep in mind, the cheapest flight when the points boost wasn't toggled on was $187, while the cheapest one when it was toggled on is $845. And actually taking another look, it's only first class where you can get these 2 cent per point multiplier value. Next, for lodging, if you wanted to stay in New York between April 14th and April 18th without the points boost toggled on, you get a total of 1,106 hotel options. With the points boost only toggled on, you get a total of 60 hotel options. So sure, you get a chance at a higher cent per point value, but the select flights and hotels are more expensive and more restricting. I would call that a major devaluation. So in short, the upcoming Hyatt devaluation, in my opinion, absolutely ruins the Chase ecosystem as a whole in my eyes. Without it, Chase has a lackluster credit card trifecta, which proves time and time again has the holes the size of Grand Canyon in terms of points and earnings categories that fall into the void of earning no more than 1.5% back, which isn't even competitive in the catch-all credit card realm, as most catch-all credit cards earn the standard 2% back. Its program centers around trying to copy American Express and failing miserably instead of trying to do something unique within the credit card space. With the Hyatt devaluations rolling out soon, I'll definitely be keeping a close eye in terms of just how serious the devaluations is, but this is definitely the final straw to break the camel's back on the entire Chase program. For me personally, I'll be prioritizing other lenders that can give me more value. That just about wraps up this video. If you want another video to watch, make sure to watch this video that's been especially curated by YouTube as a recommendation. Thank you so much for watching as always. Talk to everybody soon. Peace.